Welcome to Outside the Box Week 3. This is a stochastic and fantasy points production using the best tools in the industry from both of our sites, both stochastic and fantasy points, to identify the best plays for the Week 3 main slate. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm here with Scott Barrett. You can find him on Twitter at ScottBarrettDFB. Scott, we had I'd say a great week in week 2. We had one of your fantasy point subscribers won $1 million. Congrats to Russell Wilson, a guy that I've known a little bit. He's
Russell
been
Wilson.
Russell Miller has been around the DFS streets for quite a while, so I know him a little bit. And he won a milli maker in the 44-44. I also think that the lineup that won the large field milli maker is a lineup that you and I could have made, like based on our conversations. Looking at every player, I was like, yeah, that could have been our lineup. How did you end up doing in week 2? How do you feel about how it went?
Yeah, pretty great. I think this was an awesome start to the show. Like you said, one of our subscribers won $1 million. This other lineup was kind of straight from our video. We spoke highly of just about all those players. And what was so crazy about that lineup was it was so low owned. It was like an 80.6 combinatorial ownership. And we had a Daniel Jones stack in our own Millie lineup. So yeah, huge week for the subscribers, huge week for our show. But most importantly, we made a Galaxy Brain Daniel Jones stack for our Millie lineup that we make at the end of the show, and it cashed.
Yeah, I love that we cashed that lineup. It looked so bad early on, and Daniel Jones, probably the player that I said the most words about last week overall. I really was interested in it. But part of the reason I like Daniel Jones was I thought even if the Giants were crushing Arizona, they would probably keep their foot on the gas after the horrible week 1. Just a narrative street reason, which didn't play out at all because Arizona actually ended up taking the huge lead in the game. So it was really the Giants needed to keep up. It was also interesting though that like nobody from Arizona really crushed either. So we didn't have a bring back in our lineup. This is I have the Millie Maker.
We did
lineup.
Actually. We had Zach Ertz.
Oh, you're right. We did end up
who might not have scored any fewer points than Darren Waller. I don't remember. It was probably close.
Yeah, Darren Waller was actually a disappointment for us, a disappointment for the Millie Maker. I mean, he doesn't care that Darren Waller was disappointment because he won a Millie Maker anyway. But yeah, Darren Waller was we did the single stack. We ended up doing that instead of, and then we used Zach Ertz instead of double stacking with Paris Campbell. That's right. That is the way we went, and that worked out fine. Zach Ertz is actually pretty good point per dollar. So no complaints there. But yeah, I feel like this lineup, you look at it, we talked about how you could pair Daniel Jones with Saquon Barkley. We didn't end up doing that in our lineup, but we talked about that. I know you loved Rachaad White last week. You talked a good amount about Christian Kirk, how he was in a great spot against the Chiefs last week, how you preferred him over Kelvin Ridley.
Yeah, well, hold on. So like I broke this down on Twitter. I did like a little lineup review about how sharp this lineup was, and it was a bunch of different things. It was, no one wants to play Daniel Jones after the embarrassment in week 1 against the Cowboys. But it was also that Arizona's defense was the chalk on the slate. And so he goes contrarian. He says, screw it. I'm going to play Daniel Jones and I'm going to stack him with Darren Waller. Like that makes a ton of sense. That's the wide receiver 1 of the team, but at a tight end position that, doesn't typically score a ton of points. So you don't need as much to, gain an edge on your opponents. And then he stacked him with Saquon Barkley, which I know that's typically a faux pas to stack the quarterback with the running back, but they were actually very slightly positively correlated together last year. It was like 0.001 or something, but it's like Daniel Jones had, 6 games over 20 fantasy points, and Saquon Barkley had 25 and 4 of those 6, something like that. And then Rachaad White plus Tampa Bay, that stack made a ton of sense. That was another player everyone was down on because he was so inefficient in a bad matchup in week 1. This matchup was great. And for the defense, Justin Fields looks so lost. Like he looks like Anthony Richardson made his like 14th career start since high school. That's what Fields looks like. Whereas Anthony Richardson looks like, I don't know, a god. Had so much of him last week. That injury broke my heart. But yeah, he takes sacks more than anyone. He's turnover pro. Made a ton of sense. Zach Moss, I said, was one of the best values of the slate. Nico Collins had a big week 1 on amazing volume. Made a ton of sense there. And that was a mini stack with Houston, Zach Moss, who I said he was a top 3 cash play for me, and he was projected to be super low owned. And I said that game I thought had underrated shootout potential because two bad defenses, both playing at a blazing fast pace of play that no one caught up on. And then Christian Kirk, leverage off of the chalkiest play of the slate, Calvin Ridley. Doug Peterson said Christian Kirk is our man beater. This is a great matchup for us. He was quiet week 1, but he's going to be loud this week, something along those lines. And that's something I've been saying for over a year now, or 10 months now, is that Christian Kirk is a man beater. When Jacksonville plays man heavy defenses, he's their guy. Made a ton of sense as a leverage play. And then Keenan Allen, just like a tremendous value. You just fit it all together, and it's a brilliant lineup.
Yeah.
Part because you're taking what would normally be a 9-leg parlay, and he condensed it down to, 5, where it's like Indy, Houston is underrated. Giants score a lot of fantasy points. Rashad White and
the Bucks,
here's curb stomp the Bears. And I thought this was a brilliant lineup. This is your bag, Neil. Like my job, I think, is to kind of like nail all the puzzle pieces, right?
Yeah.
And your expertise is like putting it together. And like this to me is like a brilliant game theory designed lineup, basically off of just like a ton of players that we were mentioned and were super high on in last week's video.
Am I hearing that you're blaming me for not winning $1 million last week? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I think it was me, because you started with Daniel Jones.
It was both of us. It was both of us. I mean, we made a good lineup, to be honest. Like we don't really need to be, shooting ourselves.
It's like tort law, Neil. It's like I'll take 30% of the blame. You'll take 60, but then you owe me 60% of $1 million.
That's fair. All right. Fair enough. What's funny is, so we talk about this lineup, like this was so great. One of your best stands, I would say, on the slate was you had Anthony Richardson as your cash game quarterback and as one of your favorite quarterbacks on the slate. You mentioned, like, he came out, he scored 2 rushing touchdowns in the first quarter, was on his way to an absolutely monster day. I know you played a ton of Anthony Richardson, didn't end up working out for you. Chris Ostro saying, so many good lineups with Richardson. My best one had Montgomery and DK, who both got hurt. Yeah, I mean, that was you. Like, you played a ton of Anthony Richardson, Scott, and that obviously didn't work out well for you. Worked out better for my Daniel Jones stacks that Anthony Richardson didn't get to play the rest of the game, because he might have put up 40 fantasy points.
He was going to. I'm just going to play him every single week. Can't wait for his triumphant return. Not this week. Yeah, that would be ill-advised.
Do you think that so I've seen a couple people mention it on Twitter that, like, this year it seems like players are not recovering within 1 week from a concussion. Like, and do you think that's just going to be it going forward? Like, the NFL just not taking any risks with guys that are coming off concussions. Maybe they don't come back the following week.
I have no idea. I mean, that would probably be smart to play it as safe as possible. You don't want a lawsuit or anything like that, or just the optics too are bad. And it's like, care about these players' health.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, thanks for joining us. All right, so we've looked at this. We didn't even look at Russell's lineup, but I don't think we need to look at Russell's lineup. It's very similar. Also played a Daniel Jones stack. Obviously not.
No. He played a Purdy.
Was it not?
Yeah, he went.
You're right.
On the Rams Niners stack. That was another brilliant lineup. And I can't take credit for that. Neil is just like such a sharp player with amazing game theory. But it was fun as hell sweating alongside him in Discord last week.
All right, I don't seem to have it. Was it the 555? I was thinking that he won a $4,000 entry, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Yeah, Russell won the 555. Yeah, Russell, I mean, as I said, he's been playing DFS for a long time now. Obviously a very sharp player. He actually writes up, does his own write-ups various places of different slates. He's clearly very into it. And yeah, this is a very sharp lineup, as you said. So it was Brock Purdy and Debo was the stack that he went with. And then, of course, the double bring back of Kyron Williams and Puka Nacua. Also, this one had Keenan Allen. It did have Darren Waller once again. He also paired his defense with one of his running backs in Tony Pollard. So a lot of things that went really well in this. And of course, that had Zach Moss again, who was one of our favorite contrarian plays last week.
Right. So Debo made all the sense of the world to me. Like, we were talking about Christian Kirk as the man beater. He is San Francisco's zone beater for sure. Yeah. Purdy, I've been saying all offseason, is like super underrated. Darren Waller too. Like, that was like one of my must draft players. It hasn't gone well. Pollard, I thought was the RB1 of the slate. I think that this week as well, stacking with Cowboys makes a ton of sense. Keenan Allen, again, one of the best values of the slate. Zach Moss, like I said, Kyron Williams was a late news thing. When
Yep.
when that was announced, we were talking in DMs where not only did I think he was going to be one of the best plays of the slate, but also that he was going to go low owned. You kind of see that even for like a 4 p.m. game, you see that people are just they just finalized all their lineups, or they're busy. They're out with the wife or something, and so they don't. So those guys, no matter how good of a play they are, if that news comes out within an hour of the slate, they're always going to be low owned. And then Puka, we need to talk about Puka. This is the craziest thing about his sweat and his lineup is he knew so early on that this lineup was special. He knew he faded the entire 1 p.m. games, and maybe in like the fourth quarter of those games, he reached out to John Proctor, who works over with us, and he was like, I feel really good about this lineup. My only question is a 1v1 between Puka Nacua and Jahan Dotson. And so last week on this show, I said Jahan Dotson was maybe the best GPP play of the slate. Patrick Surtain was going to be shadowing Terry McLaurin. It was like the perfect coverage shell that he typically annihilates. But with this, it's always like someone asked me beforehand, and I said it's like 8.5 or 85% of the time, Surtain's going to shadow McLaurin, but that's not 100%. And so what happened was Surtain didn't shadow Jahan Dotson. Dotson had 5 targets and the first 2 drives, and then 0 from there. To me, that indicates that Bieniemy kind of, the first 2 drives are the scripted plays, right? And so like he knew to lock on to Dotson. Then he saw, okay, Surtain's on him more than McLaurin. Let's get off of that. So that's what I think. And then pivoting to Puka, I cut my Dotson exposure in half and doubled to Puka. Why? Because Ian Rappaport has been like awesome. Like no one realizes it. He's been better than Adam Schefter.
Telling me this. Yeah,
he's been better than Adam Schefter for over a year. And like so many people have Rap Sheet on mute, or they just like don't respect his opinion because he was so bad before that. But like for a year now, he's been considerably better than Schefter. And he has this show with Tom Pelissero, Mike Garafolo, and they've been dropping clips every morning. And like, that's what got me in Calvin Ridley in week 1. That's what got me on someone else in week 2 and went nuclear. And they were gushing over, or they were talking about how Sean McVay was gushing over Puka, how he's the real deal. And even when Kupp comes back, he's going to have like a big role. So that made me basically takeaway here is like, definitely don't be afraid to like really change things around when news breaks late. And that probably works in Russell's advantage because he's a 1 lineup player. So, those tweaks are a little bit easier than just going in and manually, I don't know, changing like 37 lineups that you spent all this time correlating. So,
yeah, I got to say, I one of my biggest regrets is that I did not get onto more of Kyren Williams. So I got on, I was well above the field. Like I agreed, like it was a sharp play, but because of the matchup, I was like, well, I can't go all in on Kyren Williams, who I don't think is any kind of special talent. And he's facing the Niners defense. So it was like, yeah, he's going to go low owned, but like he shouldn't be that owned. Like it wasn't like a spot where I thought like this guy should be 30% owned and he's going to be 2% owned. It was like, this guy should be 8% owned and he's 2%. So I think I got to like 15% Kyren Williams, because of the matchup. So I wish that the same thing had happened and he was in a matchup where I thought it was a little bit more palatable, but certainly clearly a very sharp play. Somebody that I know, our own Eric Lindquist on Live Before Lock was telling people one of the sharpest plays on the slate because of the low ownership. So ownership clearly going to be a lot less than it should be because of the late breaking news. I wish it was like any just like mid-level defense, anybody but like one of the top 5 defenses in the league, and I would have absolutely slammed it. But did you get to a good amount of Kyren in the end?
Yeah. Lots of Kyren, lots of Puka. I had so much Dotson. So thank goodness for that. I think Garafolo was the person who kind of saved me.
Yeah, that was, and you, as you told me, like we should be, following all of those guys. Like I definitely Rappaport I was one of the people who had kind of stopped putting much weight into Rappaport's opinion. Like he would sometimes break news like this player is going to be out. So I don't have him blocked or anything like that or muted. I still listen to him for some stuff, but definitely somebody that a couple of years ago burned me so many times that I was like, yeah, I'm not going to take this guy that seriously anymore. So that was a good call out that things have changed a little bit with Rappaport, and maybe there are some others that we should be following there as well. You want to talk some survivor picks?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. First of all, hello to Derek, Humble Spriggs, glad to see that you've been improving your game with Stochastic. And then William Thomas broke the news. So speaking of the concussions and people maybe not, and maybe this is a Dolphin specific thing, but Jalen Waddle was just ruled out, or at least there are rumors that Jalen Waddle is going to be out. So that'll affect some of the things that we talk about here. But let's jump in and do a little bit of Survivor. Let me pull up what we've done so far. So in week 1, I had the Commanders. Week 2, I took the Bills. Week 1, you've done the chalk both week. You went the Ravens week 1, Cowboys in week 2. So let's take a look at week 3. Who do we like here? We do have some games with pretty big gaps here with the Cowboys over the Cardinals, the Chiefs over the Bears. Huge spreads in those 2 games. Outside of those 2, we don't have any like giant spreads here. You going back to a game with a big spread, or are you going to go something more contrarian here?
I kind of really want to play the Patriots up against Zach Wilson, but that line is making me really nervous. They're only favored by 2.5 points. And what's crazy is it opened as though they were 3.5 point dogs. I don't know. That just like doesn't make any sense to me. I just don't think I can, in good faith, especially this early in the season, play a team with only a 2.5 point total. But I think that should be closer to 6. But maybe I'm just a donkey. I'll probably
go want to take the points.
What's that?
Make a bet on them to take the points. Like if you think the spread should be bigger than it is, rather than taking them in Survivor, maybe it's a bet that you want to make.
Yeah, maybe I'll do that. So I'll probably go chalky. I want to play the Bills, but like they're one of those teams that just I don't feel good about them. Kind of never feel good about them.
Sure.
Is it stupid to just like burn through all of the really good teams?
I don't think so, because we're going to have Arizona on the schedule all year. There's going to be a team facing Arizona, and a lot of the times it's not going to be one of the best teams in the league. So you can always fall back on those. I mean, you and I have talked about it a good amount that like maybe it makes sense to just like take the best teams throughout and like hope that not hope for injuries, but like things change throughout the year where like different teams become you learn more about different teams. So like I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to burn through some of the best teams when we don't have any other obvious plays.
Yeah, I think especially for someone like me, I'll get sharper the more data I have. So maybe it is good to go really safe and chalky early in the season. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs.
All right, you're taking the Chiefs.
Maybe I should save them for, when weeks get tough and buys. But I don't know. There's just no way they lose to the Bears. Their defensive coordinators in jail and Fields looks lost and all that stuff. So, I'll go with the Chiefs.
We're going to have to talk more about Justin Fields later on, because I really like Justin Fields in DFS this week, but I don't disagree with the Chiefs as your pick here. And if you're taking the Chiefs, I'm going to go with the Cowboys. I think we just eat the chalk this early in the year. So you're going Chiefs. I'm going Cowboys. I'm going to throw them up there. And you already used the Cowboys. So the Chiefs are really your only great, truly chalky option.
Oh boy.
All right. Looking good there. So we have made our bets. We've looked at week 1. We are about ready, I think, to jump into week 2, and we'll go position by position in week 2. Jewish McCaffrey says, is there a word for when you had a 212 point lineup last week but walked away with 2,500 instead of $1 million? Yeah, that word is pain. That's just misery. I don't know what else to call it for you. All right.
I mean, $2,500 is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool, but I don't think that Jewish McCaffrey is hurting for cash, given how much he plays best ball and all the money that he puts on underdog. I think he's got the cash. So for a guy like Jewish McCaffrey, I think he'd rather, it's cool, but it's not $1 billion.
That's right.
All right, so let's start by talking about some quarterbacks. And I've got the top stacks tool pulled up here. And guys, you can find our best deals for all of our tools in the description of this video. This is a stochastic tool that I'm looking at now. We'll look at fantasy points tools throughout as well. But you can find the links to our sites and our tools in the description of this video. We've got some offers on the stochastic tools going right now, and you can find the best available offer in the links in the description of this video. So the tool that I have pulled up first is the top stacks tool. We're just looking at the odds, quarterback projected ownership, and then the odds of that quarterback being part of the top stack, or that team having the top quarterback pass catcher stack here. And the top of the board, I mean, we got to talk about the chalk game right away, I think, Scott. So the chalkiest game is going to be that Minnesota Chargers game. So we have Kirk Cousins projected for 17% ownership. We have Justin Herbert projected for 9% ownership. Well, let's start with just the full chalk. So let's start with the three quarterbacks who are getting more than 10% ownership, those being Kirk Cousins, Tua Tagovailoa, and Pat Mahomes. Is there anybody of these three that you anticipate being above weight to our projected ownership?
That I think are going to come in above that, or I'm going to
No,
play
that you are going, that you would like to play above where we haven't projected in terms of ownership.
I don't know. It's tough for me to say because I'm not an MME guy. I just make a bunch of lineups and then allocate funds to whichever lineups I like the most. But I mean, I like Tua. I like Mahomes. I think Minnesota is the most interesting to me, just because like I'm really trying to be more of a contrarian player this year. I think what I'll do is like I'll make, maybe this is insane, Neil. Like I legitimately don't know. I can like think of different game theory approaches. I just don't have a good gauge on what's like too galaxy brain or not. But I kind of like the idea of like, especially for a tournament like the Millie Maker, is making a Kirk Cousins lineup without Justin Jefferson. I mean, like 8 times out of 10, Jefferson goes nuclear, but there's like 2 times out of 10 where it's just randomly Jordan Addison and Hawkinson provide the most value. You could also pay up to be contrarian with Justin Herbert. I don't think I'm personally going to go that route, but this is by far the chalkiest game of the slate. And like, there's 2 glaring leverage plays, and that's Joshua Kelly, who, you know, I was high on last week, but it was a worst possible matchup. And now the Vikings rank second worst in rushing yards per game allowed to opposing running backs. I think he's a great play. And then Madison is like, honestly, like an awesome leverage play. We talked last week about how historically Brandon Staley invites the run, literally like begging opposing offenses to run on them, like worst yards per carry allowed last year by a landslide. And with Cam Akers supposed to be inactive, like assuming that's correct, he has like a top 7, top 5 workload. I know he's not very good, but it's just like massive leverage on, you know, the highest owned wide receiver, the 3rd highest owned wide receiver, the 5th highest owned wide receiver, the highest owned quarterback. So all that just makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay, so you're going to get leverage by playing outside of these quarterbacks in some spots, but I fed you the wrong information. I was sorted by top stacks instead of quarterback ownership. We only have 2 quarterbacks who are actually being chalky here, those being Kirk Cousins and Patrick Mahomes. Sounds like you are more interested in Kirk Cousins. And to answer your question about like, would it like playing Cousins without Jefferson? I think it makes a ton of sense. I think that Cousins is 69, so he's a little bit more expensive this week than he has been in some past weeks. Jefferson, like, he needs a lot to pay off his salary. Just Jefferson is very expensive, and we've seen like Addison and Hawkinson and even KJ Osborne like have their. I mean, KJ Osborne hasn't really had a blowout game, but like he scored a touchdown in the last game. We've seen Hawkinson score 2 touchdowns in a game. Addison's had, you know, limited success, but he scored a touchdown in each game, and he was up to, I think, 78% route participation last week. Wouldn't be that shocking to see Addison continue to get more routes, and there are just so many weapons on the Vikings. I actually don't hate the idea one bit of stacking the Vikings without Justin Jefferson. I think that it's certainly viable. Would any of us be shocked to see Addison have 8 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown, and Hawkinson to have, you know, 8 receptions for 80 yards and a touchdown and just absolutely break the slate? I wouldn't be shocked by it. And even if Jefferson then, you know, adds his own 80 yards and a touchdown, like, well, that's not enough at his salary. So like Cousins gets there through those points to all 3 of them, and then the 2 cheaper guys being the guys you want. I think it's absolutely viable. So it sounds like you'd prefer if you were making, so you're playing, let's say you're playing 3 lineups. Do you think either Cousins or Mahomes makes it into one of those 3 this weekend?
I don't know.
I'm
probably
putting you on
not.
the spot.
Probably not. Just I like Tua, you know, 13.6 would make way more sense than 8.6%. I think he's one of the best plays of the slate. I kind of like that Waddle's out. Like you play Tyreek, and then who's the number 2? It's Durham Smythe or it's River Craycraft, or a little less likely it's Braxton Berrios, but all those guys are super cheap. And we know Tua has the potential to just absolutely annihilate a slate, but kind of like with Minnesota Chargers, Raheem Mostert's also a nice play. He's leverage.
Yeah. All right. So probably I realize I'm putting you on the spot because you're actually going to play like 3 to 5 lineups. So it's like you don't want to answer incorrectly and then change your mind tomorrow. So you don't need to make these decisions right now about who's going to make it into your lineup, obviously. But we've got Mahomes a little bit over-owned. We do have Kirk Cousins a little bit under. So I want to talk about this matchup for Tua. So Patrick Surtain, our big concern last week was that potentially Terry McLaurin was going to be shadowed by Patrick Surtain. We liked Jahan Dotson better as a result. Didn't really go as we expected in that game. But do you have any concerns about, like, is Surtain just going to be shadowing Tyreek Hill this whole game and kind of ruin the passing game at all for the Dolphins now with Waddle out? Is that a concern for you at all?
No, absolutely not. Denver's pass defense has gotten considerably worse. They rank bottom 5 in pass rating allowed, adjusted net yards per attempt allowed. They have absolutely no pass rush. They run man at the 6th highest rate in the league. Tua is considerably better against man. Tyreek is far and away the best wide receiver in the league against man. No Waddle. I mean, I think the most likely outcome for him is like 18 targets and like Jesus. 47 fantasy points. That's like the 50,
the most
51% of the time that happens. Yeah, he's also one of those wide receivers where like the cornerback matchup doesn't matter. In fact, you may prefer that because that means he's not getting bracket coverage. And sure. Mike McDaniel's so smart. He can do a lot of really interesting stuff with like rub routes and movement behind the line of scrimmage and things of that nature. So no, I think Tyreek goes nuclear this week.
Well, that's a beautiful thing because what you're thinking is in line with these stochastic tools. As you said, we've got Tua coming in at about 9% ownership with a 14% chance to be in the top stack. You're saying that Tua should be 14% owned. So he's looking like he's very under-owned, and maybe Tua is one of those spots that we want to target. That's been my one hesitation is, just the potential shadow coverage, like Surtain, one of those guys that I don't really want to be picking on. But you're right, like nobody can cover Tyreek Hill, so maybe not a concern.
I legitimately think it's a good thing for Tyreek Hill.
Okay. All right, so you are all in on the Tua Tyreek stack. That is good to see, and it's not particularly chalky. Actually, just 9% ownership there. All right, so we want to talk about before we get into the more contrarian options, I want to throw in just the fourth there because we talk about this Minnesota Los Angeles game, and we've talked about all the different ways to attack it. But is a Justin Herbert Chargers stack something that you think you'll consider this weekend?
It makes sense. I think I said that earlier, is like it's a sort of pay up to be contrarian option. But to me, again, like condensed, like only playing a few lineups, I would just add Herbert plus Cousins, and then that's 25% of the slate. And all their pass catchers are so chalky. I just think there's more to be gained by fading it. But it's like no doubt, obviously, the sexiest game by far.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly got like a really high total. I love these games so much when you have two bad defenses against two great offenses. That's just like, man, that's exciting. But you're right.
They're both super pass heavy. They both played a super fast pace of play. But I mean, there are a lot of games to like, maybe not like over unders in comparison, but like the Chiefs have a higher implied total than the Vikings. And I think the Cowboys, Dolphins, Chargers, Ravens are all like within a point. So
yeah, so we do have some interesting games that we can attack. All right, well we'll jump into some of those. I want to throw this one out from Debro. Comes in and says CJ Stroud should be chalk, and he's not going to be. So CJ Stroud throwing just a ton so far. My concern though is just the defense of the Jaguars. I think it's a legit defense, so I don't know that I'm actually going to be going much to this Texans stack. What do you think of the Texans stack here?
Yeah, so I wrote up Stroud as my favorite contrarian quarterback by far. Pace of play is sky high. They're extremely pass heavy. This is a Shanahan influenced offense. Their offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick, worked at PFF the same time as I did, and everyone talked about him like he was just like a savant. Their defense is really bad. So I think there's some potential here. The defense, Houston's defense, I mean, some shootout potential. But yeah, I do think Jacksonville, I'd say they're above average defense. Like technically, they've given up the 5th most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. That's like not a good stat. That's like super noisy.
Right.
They face 2 guys who run the ball a lot, but I don't know. I don't see it as like super worrisome. Again, I love Stroud. I think he's way too cheap, but like the best argument for him is that his 3 wide receivers are like easily 3 of the best values on the entire slate. So just stack him with 2 of those guys, and you can afford to play up for like a lot of these high price players we like Hill, Jefferson, Kelsey, Pollard. And so, yeah, I think that makes all the sense in the world. I love that play.
Yeah, and then Derek pointed out that we're missing some defensive pieces for the Jags also. So that, yeah, I mean, plenty of reason to play the Jags. Maybe by the time I'm building lineups tomorrow, I'll get to a little bit more Stroud. Looks like, I mean, as you said, like the cheap pass catching options obviously helps quite a bit there as well. So maybe I'll end up rethinking it. And then you've got the obvious run backs on the Jags, some interesting plays, particularly with Zay Jones out. We'll talk about running backs and Travis Etienne, what level of interest we have there, but that's certainly a contrarian play we can get to. But let me open it up to you. Who are some of your favorite contrarian plays? Anybody outside of these top 4? Who do you think are some of your favorite stacks this weekend?
Yeah. So, Stroud was number 1 in my contrarian section, which is like sub 5%. Desmond Ridder was number 2. That's another one I feel really good about. So like all offseason, everyone was like so excited to draft these Atlanta skill position players. I was saying, don't do that. Arthur Smith, like his offense is like from World War II in terms of how run heavy it is, how slow paced it is. But like people like were so excited because these players are so talented. And I don't think Desmond Ridder's talented, but the other players are. And so it's just, there are going to be games in which Arthur Smith is forced to break out of his shell. And they pick up the pace, they go more pass heavy. And in such instances, there's massive value, especially in a week like this, where Kyle Pitts is by far the cheapest he's ever been. Desmond Ridder's only 5,000. Like Mariota sucked last year too, but he had some GPP winning weeks. I think the Chipotle guy like played him constantly and did pretty well with it. But yeah, the Lions defense, it looks like somewhat of a pass funnel this year. Last year, they led the league in combined points at home by far. It was the 2nd most points allowed at home. And again, I just think Desmond Ridder plus Kyle Pitts, maybe plus Bijan Robinson too. And then in Detroit, Jahmyr Gibbs, I like, Josh Reynolds, I like. And so it's cheap, lots of upside. No one's on it. So that's one I like a lot.
You notably did not mention Drake London there. Do you think Drake London is somebody you consider in that stack?
Yeah, for sure. Can consider him. I just think he's a comparable play to Pitts, but Pitts is cheaper and there's more upside when the production comes at the tight end position.
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely true. Interesting. So I did not expect you to be talking about Desmond Ridder on this.
I think he's terrible. He's the worst quarterback, but it just makes a lot of sense this week. But again, this is like a YOLO contrarian large field tournament play. Like, I don't know if you're in high stakes, you want to get that cute. I don't know.
I mean, everything that I talk about is YOLO, large field milli maker stuff. So yeah, maybe not in high stakes. He is cheap enough and decent enough matchup that maybe you consider it, but probably not. I think I'm with you. Not the first place you go in high stakes. I want to talk about my I named him as my favorite stack early today in only the largest field GPP. I want to hear how crazy you think I am that I want to go to Justin Fields this weekend against the Chiefs. I think that he's going to be. I mean, he said that he wants to play more instinctively. He wants to like change up the way he's playing, which to me means he wants to start running the ball again, or at least playing with running being an option for him. So I'm really interested in Justin Fields this week. We have Fields coming in at like no ownership. Where is he even? I think we had him at 0.9% projected ownership for Justin Fields. He's 7,100. He's in a matchup with the Chiefs where you'd think he's going to have to be throwing the ball a bit or just manufacturing somehow ways to score some fantasy points. How crazy do you think I am to want to go to a Justin Fields stack this weekend?
No, I think that makes a ton of sense. My write-up for him was basically either the Bears offense looks like Bishop Sycamore versus Clemson, or Fields has 187 rushing yards, and like that's equal odds, right. and like both things can be true at once.
Yep.
So I think he's a great high upside GPP play. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I'm still, so people ask us sometimes, well, would you run them out there naked? I don't run quarterbacks out there naked anymore. I just think that you want to, as we talked about, eliminate the number of things you need to get right. So even though he can do a lot through through the air, or sorry, on the ground, I think that I'm still going to be stacking him, probably just single stacking with Justin Fields. So I'll probably do some Fields with DJ Moore or Fields with Cole Kmet maybe, and just hope for one of those guys to score a touchdown through the air as part of Fields' production. So for me, I'm not going to be running him out there naked. I think that obviously if you were inclined to run a quarterback out there naked, he's somebody that you could consider doing as well. Good to see that Debro thinks it's Fields with Kmet is the play in large field GPPs. I don't hate that. I mean, we saw it happen multiple times last year where they absolutely broke a slate. And then I see people in chat. I think Derek started this one too, talking about Andy Dalton. Any interest in playing some Andy Dalton this weekend?
No, but I mean, I get it. He was like super awesome last year, and like no one realizes it. He ranked 3rd in catchable throw rate. He ranked 4th in PFF grade. He ranked, I don't know, highly in a bunch of key stats. I think the offense is going to be considerably better, but like the bottom line is like the receivers suck. The offense looks toast. I like Gardner Minshew a lot more. That's part of it.
Okay, let's talk about Gardner Minshew. I would, Debro, if you're still here, just throw in chat. Who are you even pairing with Andy Dalton? That's my question. It's like, which of these receivers? You playing Thielen? Who do you want to pair with Andy Dalton? All right, but Gardner Minshew, I think, is
I know
a little bit more straightforward. Yeah, who are you pairing with Gardner Minshew?
Oh, this one's super easy. Michael Pittman. Minshew's thrown to Pittman 40% of the time this year, which is elite usage, and Pittman also saw elite usage with Anthony Richardson. I also just think he's like an underrated talent. Like he looked really good last week. He looked really good in spot starts with the Eagles. He looked legitimately good with Jacksonville. And in 24 career starts, he averages 17.9 fantasy points per game. That means based on his current salary, he's hit 4x value 33% of the time, 33x value 75% of the time. And now he's with the QB guru goat Shane Steichen. Like that was a big reason I was so high on Anthony Richardson. So, and he has familiarity with Steichen. So I think he's just like another like really interesting salary saver. And there's like a lot of high price players to like. So it makes me kind of gravitate towards these players a little bit more.
So we'll get into to wide receivers a bit more later, but I'm curious, are you just single stacking? Because I did notice like Alec Pierce is like 3,300. There's some cheaper options for the Colts, so it would be a pretty inexpensive double stack with Minshew. Or you think you're going to just be single stacking with Pittman, or
no? I would single stack that.
Okay,
like I don't know, he doesn't have break the slate upside,
right?
He would just be like a strong value, and then like the other players we liked, like Ritter and Stroud, may be disappointed.
Okay. Any other quarterbacks that you want to talk about here?
Monitor the weather in Buffalo, just because like Josh Allen's projected ownership seems like super low for Josh Allen.
Yep.
But that's about it.
Yep. That is a good point there. I guess so let me throw any Dak for you against Arizona. Or any interest, I should say. Like, do you think people should consider playing Dak?
That's a question I've been asking myself, because it's like, well, first of all, I think Pollard goes nuclear, but second of all, it's like, do I need to play Dak or do I just play CeeDee Lamb? And it's like the same thing with Kansas City too. Is like, do I need to play Mahomes or could I just play Kelsey? And so like when I ask those questions, I kind of just like cross it off my list.
Okay, that's fair. Let me ask.
Is that right? Like, I don't know. I'm asking a question. Is that how you think about it? Like in what circumstance? Jalen Tolbert plus CeeDee Lamb or Pollard maybe catches a touchdown or two.
So
it should be a run heavy affair,
right?
But
so in this particular case, I think that makes sense. Just like go to the guys that you think are actually going to go off and not necessarily the quarterback. It is so. Alex Baker has said many times, kind of. The other side of it as well. Sometimes it's like, so like I'll give the example of like there are plenty of times last year where it was like, or maybe 2 years ago, where Cooper Kupp looked incredible and Cooper Kupp was going to be 25% owned, and then we had Stafford at 2% owned, and so Alex would say, well, in that case, you already want to play Cooper Kupp. He's in a great matchup, but nobody is playing the quarterback there. Maybe just throw the quarterback onto the stack with the chalky wide receiver who you're already expecting to do well. And if that receiver does well, the quarterback probably going to do well too. So there's kind of two sides to that coin. I think
Yeah,
of the
I just think there are some quarterbacks where that doesn't work. Like, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but like Aaron Rodgers plus Devontae Adams. I just never played Rodgers. I just always played at because it was so rare for him to break the slate and then get the number 2 right.
True. Yeah. I mean, it is when it's so condensed to one receiver. I think it makes some sense to just go to.
I mean, CeeDee Lamb
receiver.
leads the league in yardage market share, and we think they're going to be run heavy. So,
yeah.
I thought about it. I did think about it.
Okay.
Geno Smith, another one. But maybe I'm wrong. I did think about it, but I just have a lot of Kenneth Walker. But that is one I kind of struggle with.
Yeah, I thought about that too. Let me throw one more name at you because I apparently just love to play quarterbacks who have been awful so far. One of those being Deshaun Watson, and the matchup with Tennessee, very much a pass funnel defense. It was so ugly watching that Browns game last time out, but like, is it possible for Deshaun Watson to come out here against this Tennessee defense and light them up? To me, I think it should be possible. Do you have any interest in Deshaun Watson?
Oh yeah, my bad. I had it in contrarian quarterbacks: Stroud 1, Ritter 2, and then Watson 3.
Okay.
Minshew 4. Yeah, I think it's an awesome play. Like obviously Watson looks like ass, but like that's the narrative that's rampant and driving down ownership. And sure, like again, he looks like ass, but he finished as the QB5 in week 1. He gets a literal best possible matchup against the Titans. His receivers are cheap. He offers direct leverage on Jerome Ford. And I was playing around with a data suite yesterday, and it's like it's him, Burrow, and Lawrence, which are like the quarterbacks you wouldn't expect, but it's like they've had a ton of wide receivers open, like deemed open per our charters, and which is really good. It's like means their wide receivers are getting open and making plays, but their completion percentage, it's a little too involved to break down right now, but their completion percentage on those throws were like worse than the league. So really it's just like the plays are there. They just need to make them. It's on them. And, maybe that happens this week. Elijah Moore came like super close to making some huge plays. So I think Watson's, an awesome play.
Okay. And I pulled up the data suite. We don't need to use it. I just wanted to remind ourselves that we've got the data suite at the ready. If we do want to, as we're talking about some of these positions, I'm always ready to pull up the data suite, look at some of this advanced information.
We're already at 45 minutes though, Neil. So.
Oh, you're right. And we're trying to.
No, I just mean we always think we have more time than we do.
No, you're absolutely right about that. But just wanted to remind ourselves that we've got the data suite at the ready if we want to go there. Of course, you have a lot of these sets. You've already looked into it, so you've got them at the ready. We don't necessarily need to always pull them up. Let's move on to running backs. We're already 45 minutes in, as you said. We're trying to keep this show under an hour and a half. I think is a realistic goal for us. Maybe this is probably I think 45 minutes in is the earliest we've moved on to the running backs from the wide receiver. So we're doing great. We're doing great, Scott. All right. Looking at the running backs, our highest owned running backs. So it looks like we've got about 10 or so, maybe 11 or 12 running backs getting double-digit ownership here. Let's take a look. Let's start with just these top 4 that are getting 15% plus. Pretty thin line there between Sanders and Moss. But we'll start with the top 4. Tony Pollard, we have at 23% ownership. Josh Kelly, 19%. Travis Etienne, 19%. Zach Moss, 15%. Do you have a favorite, least favorite? How do you like these top 4?
Yeah, I like it. I think 1 through 3 makes a ton of sense. I might have Walker 3 or 4, him and Etienne. Sanders, I mean, I get it. I just don't think I'm going to play any of him.
Okay.
Moss is fine. I don't know that he's going to break a slate, but.
Yeah, Moss is one that I'm struggling with against that Baltimore defense. I don't think I'm going to be clicking Moss all that much.
Yeah, I think you're right for tournaments.
Yeah, at 5,500. Yeah, for tournaments specifically. I'm glad to see. So I think earlier in the day we had some positive leverage on Moss. The tools get better as we get closer to lock. So I'm actually happy to see that at this point. I don't feel the need to play any based on the tools. Like earlier, I was like, man, I don't really want to click that, but maybe I'll think about it if the tools look good. At this point, doesn't even look good in the tools. So that's good to see. We talked about ETN a little bit, just in this hardcore run funnel defense. He seems like I think he's probably going to be a big part. Actually, these top 3, I actually love all of them. Pollard against Arizona, Josh Kelly against my Vikings, Travis Etienne against the Texans. To me, all 3 are going to be big parts of my lineups. I might end up even overweight to the field on all three. Do you think I'm making a mistake there?
No, I just want to say again, I think like Walker and Etienne are exactly the same really good play.
Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like Kenneth Walker quite a bit as well. Yeah, he's just been so involved. He's been involved in the passing game. He's just been getting all of the work out there, and I don't think people necessarily have recognized that. And he's 6,200. We've got him at 14% ownership, 13% chance of being optimal. But I agree with you. I think he's also going to be a big part of my plans. Moving down, you talked a little bit earlier about Alexander Mattison as a nice leverage spot on that Vikings passing offense. Do you think that you're going to be playing Alexander Mattison in any of your lineups, or do you think people should be playing him?
Yeah. For all the reasons I laid out, like he's a really, assuming Cam Akers is inactive, which is what we're being told, he's a great value. And then he offers like immense leverage. The problem with him is like Minnesota always just goes so pass heavy, and like this should be a game where they could just abandon the run. But it's like, what if you don't? What if you don't and you played him? Then you make all the money. So I think that's really interesting. The issue I'm having with this slate in particular is I really like a lot of running backs. And,
do you really? Okay.
And there are running backs I like that are drawing like 0% ownership. So I'm going to have probably a lot of that.
I love the 0% owned guys. So like, I think there's a narrative out there that people say sometimes you don't need to go get that weird to win $1 million. And that is true, but I think that it's kind of an incomplete statement. You don't need to get that weird, but it helps you out a lot if you do. Like if you can get that 0% owned guy, if you're the only person in a tournament, which you're not going to be the only one, but if you're one of 20 people in a tournament that has a player that goes nuclear, you are so far ahead of the field. So if you can identify those guys that are getting no ownership, those are my favorite plays on any given slate. Millie maker slate. So I'm talking large field GPPs. That's kind of what I play. So I love that. So tell me about some of these guys that you love who are getting virtually zero ownership.
Well, I like Raheem Mostert, Ramondre, Gibbs, Bijan. That's in like the tier above the sub 5% tier. Yep. But in the sub 5% tier, I think Kendre Miller is like a legitimately amazing player. He's only 4,300 on DraftKings. He's supposedly fully healthy. His only competition for touches is a tight end, right. Which granted, he could vulture. And then Tony Jones, who has the 9th worst yards per carry average of any running back since 1970. And so I could really just see him being the guy. Like, I think that's what they should do. And I think that's probably what they're going to do. I texted Nick Underhill, the Saints best beat writer. I asked him about this. He said, definitely possible. That's not like a super convicted take, but right. That's just like what I'm leaning. And so like 4,300 saves you a lot. And everyone wanted to play Jamal Williams in week 1 in a brutal matchup. Why? Because historically, the Saints offense features running backs to a higher degree than just about any other offense. So he's definitely one. Another one is like Gus Edwards, who I like significantly more than Jerome Ford. I probably like him more than Zach Moss. And that might be like irrespective of ownership. It's probably some sort of committee with Melvin Gordon, I guess. But I mean, there's a really good chance he doesn't. They're favored by 8.5 points. He could walk into the touchdown twice. No one's really playing him. I think he's a great play. And then I have 2 super galaxy brain plays.
Those aren't your galaxy brain plays. All right, let's hear it.
No, those are good plays where the ownership just doesn't make sense. Yep. The galaxy brain plays are Jerick McKinnon.
Okay.
I think if you really dig into this game, you can make a case that he's like the second best stacking option from this game. And it's because so people are going to play Pacheco, and I'm just never going to play Pacheco. And it's because Pacheco gets pulled near the end zone, where touches become the most valuable. And this was the case last year. This is the case this year. McKinnon has a 64% snap share inside the 10-yard line. Pacheco's only down at 27%. And we know he has high upside. He averaged 20.7 DraftKings fantasy points per game over his last 5 games last year. He was the team's captain in the Super Bowl. Pacheco's dealing with a hamstring bruise. And, given Travis Kelce's health, given how shitty the wide receivers have been, I think it makes sense to to give him some more targets. But really, this is just like super galaxy brain. I don't know if I'm going to play him. And then the next one is Breece Hall stacked with Jets defense.
Okay.
Again, they have a great defense, and that line is a lot closer than I expected. 1% projected ownership, 5,600. I think given the matchup, given the weather, given how bad Zach Wilson is, the Jets could and should lean massively, run heavy. And we know from like week 1 and from last season, like this is a player who can, get 150 yards from scrimmage on just less than a dozen touches.
True.
So those are just my super YOLO Galaxy brain plays of the week.
Yeah, sort of surprising to see Breece Hall this low owned at 5,600, just given how much he has shown already this year, especially in that.
All the dynasty bros are going to play him for sure.
Yeah, that's right. So they're going to make up that 1.1%. Jerick McKinnon, man, that's the kind of play that I can get behind. It's definitely Galaxy brain. Looking at his routes run so far this year, he had 39% route participation week 1, down to 29 in week 2. It actually went down. I did not realize that, and has just 1 carry on the year so far. But we've seen it happen before, where like he's not getting worked, he's not getting used at all, and then suddenly Patrick Mahomes is throwing him 2 touchdowns in a game. Like, can happen out of nowhere. So yeah, as far as like, do you feel better about McKinnon or any? Let me ask you this: do you feel better about any of the Patriots wide receivers than you feel about Jerick McKinnon? You got to ask yourself that. And it's like, people are going to play some of the Patriots wide receivers and not going to play McKinnon. And I'm not sure that I feel better about the click on any of the receivers than Jerick McKinnon. So yeah, that's definitely.
You mean the Bears receivers, or are you talking about?
No, the Chiefs receivers against the Bears. Like,
yeah, okay.
Is there anybody that you'd rather pair with Patrick Mahomes? Obviously, Travis Kelce is the number 1 receiving option in the entire game, but for the Chiefs, like, I don't feel better about any of like Sky Moore or MVS. Like that's not any more comfortable for me than Jerick McKinnon is.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This is for field stacks and for especially Mahomes stacks, like exclusively.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I like those call outs. Definitely. Somebody in chat was bringing up Roschon Johnson earlier as a potential stack with Justin Fields. Do you have any interest in Roschon Johnson here?
No, but he would fall into like the YOLO GPP play category on FanDuel.
Okay, interesting. So the largest field stuff on FanDuel. That makes sense to me. All right, any other running backs that you want to talk about here?
Not really. What about stacking Bijan with Gibbs? Like, I think that's viable, and I don't think anyone's going to do it, but
it is. Get the 2 fun rookie running backs together in the same lineup. Maybe they're showcasing, having a little battle for the first round rookie running back. Yeah, I could see that.
Well, my thinking is like they may actually be like correlated together. Bijan leads the position in route share and targets or target share, and then Gibbs had 9 targets last week. So I don't know. That's just like me trying to think of more Galaxy brain stuff and seeing if you want to veto it or think it's a little interesting.
No, I think it's a little bit interesting. I'm not going to be forcing that stack, but like if you're hand building, you want to do a little correlation between those 2. I don't hate it. What do you think the usage is going to look like for Jahmyr Gibbs now with David Montgomery out? Like, do you think Craig Reynolds just steps into that David Montgomery role completely, or do you think Gibbs is going to get a little bit of that work?
Well, the Lions' best beat writer, Tim Twentyman, I think is his name, said he puts the projection at 15 carries
for Gibbs.
And so 15 carries for Gibbs as a projection, and then 9 targets last week.
Yeah.
By the way, Amon-Ra St. Brown is like seriously banged up, dealing with turf toe. That's typically an injury that takes like 4 weeks until your production returns to baseline. And then, and we saw that last week. He had that injury, and then he only had 1 target from there, while Gibbs led the team with 5 targets, 1 more than Josh Reynolds. And it's also a lot of too high coverage, which St. Brown has really struggled with against, but it funnels volume to the running backs and tight ends. Anyway, just like a lot popping for Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think a lot of people missed that tweet, and like that sounded off to me, like a little off at least. But it's just, that doesn't really seem baked in.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to get 15 carries and 9 receptions, like I would lock him into my lineups against Atlanta.
If you look at like every running back over the past decade who had 15 carries and 6 or more targets, they averaged like 26 fantasy points per game. So
yeah,
it's just like,
Yeah, and at 6,600, that's more than reasonable. Yeah, that would. I'll have to go reread that tweet. Maybe I'll have you send me the link to this beat writer, because that's
Yeah, I can
juicy.
send it to you right now.
If he's going to get 15 carries, that is very juicy for Jameer. He's somebody that I'm like, I don't know that I'm expecting him to get much more of a role, but obviously a beat writer should know more than I do. And also, like, he's a rookie, exciting rookie running back. So like naturally you'd expect him to get a little bit more work throughout the year anyway. It was just a matter of like how early is he going to be, picking up a little bit more of that role. But yeah, that interests me for sure. If he's going to be getting, and obviously even if he gets 15 carries, there's no guarantee that he does get the nine targets, but certainly within the realm of possibility. And as you said, Amon-Ra. So we'll talk about Amon-Ra with the wide receivers, because he's a receiver that I've been thinking about playing. But if he's not going to be, he's obviously not fully healthy, but if you think it's going to affect his production, maybe that'll hurt things.
I mean, there's been some divide on this.
Okay.
One like Twitter injury expert says he's not worried. But I don't know. I saw a few who are seriously worried. And then there's also like a coverage shell matchup that's ill suited towards his skill set. So
okay,
I'm probably not playing him.
Depending on how, so this is, I'm reading Jared Smola's quote. Depending on how the game goes, I'd expect Gibbs to be around the 15 carry mark and continue to be a big part of the passing game. He already got 9 receptions in 2 games. Yeah, that's
him quoting Tim Twentyman.
Oh, right. You're right. That's very, very interesting to see that he could get that kind of. I mean, that would be a slam dunk kind of play if he's going to get 15 carries and anything close to 9.
I mean,
targets.
you could just see him breaking the slate, and it's like, well, they told us, like,
right, exactly. Like, we're gonna.
Who could have seen this coming? Oh, wait, yeah,
you're right. Yeah, the beat writer told us exactly that this was going to happen. That's interesting.
There's also like per sources, the Lions have like spent a lot of time working on red zone plays specifically designed for Gibbs.
I believe it. They should.
And I could see them. We haven't seen that yet. I could see them breaking that out this week.
Yep, that would definitely make sense. Man, that would be fun. We're not doing Jerome Ford this week, are we?
No.
We did Josh Kelly a little bit last week. It hasn't worked the past 2 weeks. The backup running back stepping in against this Tennessee run defense. He looked good. He did look good coming in for Nick Chubb the last game, but he's.
I mean, what just when Kendre Miller's like 1%, I'm just going to go that route personally.
Yeah, that's a good point. Rather just go to Kendre Miller there. Sounds like you're not going to Isaiah Pacheco. He's a guy that I am thinking about playing, and he looks good in the boom bust tool. So I'll probably play some Pacheco, but you're just going to go completely contrary and go to the other Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, if he's getting pulled near the end zone, like you're just praying for a long run, which isn't really something he does too often.
Yep.
Really caps his upside from a GPP perspective, in my opinion.
Any other running backs that you want to touch on before we move on to wide receivers?
No, I don't think so. When you're talking about Jerick McKinnon, I feel like you've covered it.
Yeah, we've got pretty deep into the weeds here. All right, we'll move on.
Oh, I did mention the guys in the other tier, but we don't have to. Raheem Mostert, Ramondre, Madison, we talked about. Bijan, but yeah, we can move on.
Okay, yeah, I think those are all good shout outs. I'm definitely interested in I think all of those guys. Definitely gonna be playing a lot of Madison for all the reasons that you mentioned. Bijan, as you said, definitely an interesting play against Detroit. So those are good call outs there. We saw Stevenson take on more of the workload, it seemed, from Zeke last week, so that is promising, of course. All right, so at the top in terms of ownership for wide receivers, J-Jets getting 26.6%, massive ownership for a 9,300 J-Jets, but primo matchup with the Chargers. We got Keenan Allen coming in at 20.4 against the Vikings, Tyreek Hill at 18, Mike Williams at 16.7. So let's break it off right there. Those are our top 4 in terms of projected ownership. Anybody that you're fading from that top 4 there?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to make lineups that intentionally fade Minnesota, Los Angeles, just because it's so chalky. I mean, we'll see. It's one thing to say that, but it's another thing to actually go that route. I think of those names, I probably like Keenan the least.
Okay, so Keenan would be if you were going to be fading any of these 4, but they all seem like fine plays. So you don't want to take a stand against any of these top 4. You think that the ownership seems fine?
I mean, yeah. When I wrote them up like for cash, it was like basically those guys. So
okay, well then let's move down the line to maybe we should sort by salary here. maybe that'd be easier to talk about the different wide receivers in terms of just the high end. I mean, we talked about Josh Allen being really low owned. We still have Diggs getting, I guess, down to 7% now. We had him at like 10% earlier, so that's a little bit promising. Seeing Diggs at just 7%. But as you said with Josh Allen, you're just keeping an eye on the weather there. Maybe you play him if the weather's fine.
Yeah, definitely monitor the weather with both Diggs and Gabe Davis. Like, if it seems like the weather reports were overblown, I'd be super into that dub stack. Davis is kind of interesting. He has like the better coverage shell matchup, or at least it's like more suited towards what he typically does well against. But like Diggs, I mean, he was awesome in week 1. He flopped in week 2, and now he's low owned. But again, really that all kind of comes down to ownership. But if the weather's good, he's an awesome play.
So you brought up Gabe Davis having the better matchup. What do you think of under 1% ownership for Gabe Davis?
Yeah, not the better matchup, just that it's like better suited towards
Okay.
Davis, or it's like a matchup that he typically has spike weeks against. Yeah, 1%. Yeah, that's a killer play. But again, monitor the weather because it's supposedly like you could barely play in it. So keep an eye on that.
Yeah, that's not ideal. Okay. So we haven't really we talked about Tyreek Hill a good amount during the quarterback portion of the show, so maybe we don't need to get back.
Yeah, I don't know that Jefferson's a better play than Tyreek at all.
Tyreek coming in at 8.6% less ownership is what we have him projected for. So Tyreek Hill, sounds like he's your favorite wide receiver play on the slate.
I don't know, but he's like banged up. But I mean, like I have him neck and neck with Jefferson, is what I'm saying. But
okay. But at reduced ownership,
right?
So okay, so you have some interest in Tyreek Hill, one of your favorite stacks at the very least. So we talked about the turf toe issue with Amon-Ra, but we got him at 7% ownership, 11% chance to be an optimal. What do you think of Amon-Ra at 7,900?
Yeah, I'm just personally probably not playing him.
Okay, you're not an Amon-Ra guy. I think I'll probably.
It's just not the right matchup. Like the injury really scares me. I think Josh Reynolds is a strong value. I'd rather slide into some of my lineups, especially if I'm trying to be paying up for Tyreek and Jefferson. Which,
yeah, good point. You can't pay up for everybody. So Amon-Ra gets the cut there. We talked about you said that you'd have some interest in playing CD, maybe not in stacks. Who do you want to talk about here? Just looking at the high price guys. Tell me who are some of your favorites here.
I don't know. Ridley's interesting. Debro brought it up earlier, but the Texans are down Jalen Petrie, their CB1, Derek Stingley. This was a guy, one of the biggest revelations of this season so far was like week 1. It's like, oh, damn, the Jaguars they're like a Stephon Diggs of their own, right? And then he was the chalkiest player of the week 2 slate, and now no one wants to play him, and he's still like mispriced if he is the Stephon Diggs of the Jacksonville Jaguars up against a Texans defense that's missing their 2 best players in the secondary. I don't know that I'm gonna have a ton of exposure, but I think he's a good play that makes sense. And he definitely, to me, stands out above Olave, Metcalf, Wilson, Judy, Lockett, Hopkins, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. It looks like we still have Waddle in here, so we're going to have to get him removed from our projections. I'm guessing the Hill ownership is going to go up a little bit as a result of that, but still probably not going to get too crazy there. I think people are going to remain on that Vikings-Chargers game. One would think at the very least. Let me see if there's any other. Well, first of all, are there any other contrarian wide receivers that you feel like you'd like to talk about?
Well, I'm surprised Tank Dell wasn't in like the top 4 for you guys. I think he's an incredible play. 3,600 on DraftKings. What's his ownership?
We've got Tank Dell at 8% ownership.
Yeah, that seems surprisingly low. Like I think he's going to be in most cash lineups. And he ran more routes than Nico Collins last week. Had more targets. Had more XFP. Ranked top 15 among all wide receivers in both XFP and fantasy points. Despite having 7.2 fantasy points negated due to penalty. He caught a touchdown pass and they called that back. Josh Reynolds, like I said, 4,200. Nico is a good play, 5,300. Devontae Parker. We talked about Pittman. Pittman, good value. Devontae Parker, to me, like was like on par with Tank Dell before the weather stuff. I just think he's like the clear wide receiver one of this Patriots offense that like looks awesome, is playing at a super fast pace. Mac Jones leads the league in pass attempts. Amari Cooper, I like a lot. We talked about that with Watson.
Yep.
It's just like it's a literal best possible matchup. The Titans have ranked bottom 3 in fantasy points per game to wide receivers 4 years in a row. This is a home game. Amari Cooper splits home or road are obscene. This is a home game. That's good news. His volume has been awesome. He ranks 9th among all wide receivers in threat rate. If you look at target share, that stat's a little obscured because he missed some time due to injury. He was barely healthy enough to play last week. He had 10 targets and 90 yards. I think Jordan Addison is one of the best plays of the slate. I know KJ Osborne's playing over him, but he had a 72% route share last week. That's really good.
Right.
And it's just like only a matter of time before,
And it increased from week 1 to week 2. It went up a little bit.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's promising.
Here's how bad KJ Osborne's been. So Osborne ranks 9th worst of 70 wide receivers in yards per route run. Addison ranks 18th. If Addison has run as many routes as Osborne, he'd rank top 12 in receiving yards. He's doing all this with like a super low first read target share, mostly coming in 3 wide receiver sets with more target competition. And so he like seems expensive at 5,500, but I really think he's one of these players where it would not surprise me if he's, 6,900 in 4 or 5 weeks. Right. And
right.
This could be the breakout game for Addison. Justin Jefferson's breakout game was his 3rd career game. Before that, he was just like Addison, like 66% of the snaps. And then week 3, he goes nuclear. And this is the matchup, right? The Chargers have given up a league high 57.1 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. More of that on the perimeter than in the slot, which is where KJ Osborne typically is. And so, Jefferson's the highest owned play of the slate. So what is Addison coming in at?
Yeah, we've got him at 6.5% projected ownership at 5,500. To me, we have a little bit of negative leverage here, but I like to point out that like sometimes with rookie receivers, it's kind of hard to really know what the range of outcome, or rookie players in general. Like this is one of those spots where I think that the boom odds or the optimal odds are a little bit more fragile than the more known commodities. So I think that Addison, despite a little bit of negative leverage here, that's not going to drive me away from Addison here. I like him quite a bit as well at 5,500. Definitely with you there. I want to point out, so Scott, you're mentioning frequently that you are using the data suite to find a lot of these options, and you guys, we haven't been pulling it up much on the show so far, but you can the data suite was like $50 for the entire season or something like that. It's a pretty cheap option here that you're offering from Fantasy Points. Is that right?
That's right. And you can see on the left, basic passing, basic rushing, basic receiving. Those are all free tools. Which means you don't have to give us any money to access those.
All right.
The data, you just click on basic passing real quick. This data comes out within 15 minutes of the game's ending. And so it has a lot of valuable stats that you're not going to find free anywhere else. And like you can pay other sites and you probably don't have it either. But it has like the GOAT fantasy stat. If you scroll all the way to the right, fantasy points per dropback or fantasy points per opportunity. Those are 2 of the best stats. We have a number of different scoring systems you can use. You can filter for various weeks. Then if you want to click on the filter option all the way to the left, right below that, you can check and see how quarterbacks did in wins versus losses, road versus home, division games. Click on play real quick.
Play.
So right at the top, it was
right. I see what. Yep. Gotcha.
And so, you could break it down by quarter. Was the quarterback leading or trailing? Did this happen in the red zone? Et cetera, et cetera. You can also split out a bunch of stuff. And this is just a tool that's for free. You're not paying for it. And if you want to be a Fantasy Points subscriber to our content, I really believe that we have the best football content analysis in the space when it comes to fantasy, DFS, betting. Like I said, we'll give you the puzzle pieces. It's on you to put that together, but I think we're the best at giving you the right puzzle pieces in the right order. And if you want to subscribe, I'll end the spiel right now. Gurific 25 gives you 25% off. That's GURRIFIC 25 for 25% off. We're super cheap. Last week, I told you how much we were, and you thought that was the per month rate, but $60 for a standard subscription, 150 for a premium, and 25% off with Gurific 25.
Can you spell that one more time?
Yeah, GURRIFIC 25. Hopefully I spelled that right. If it doesn't work, just hit me up on Twitter.
All right, yeah, just hit Scott up on Twitter if you can't find it. But yeah, check it out if you haven't already. I thought since we haven't looked at your tools at all, I should give you at least a little chance to talk about them, because I know that we're talking about your tools throughout the show. Like you're talking about how you use the tools to identify some of your favorite plays, but we haven't. We're getting through. We're already an hour and 10 minutes in. We haven't had much time to look at them. So wanted to give it a quick shout out, because Scott is using these tools to identify a lot of his favorite plays on the slate. And of course, we've been looking at these stochastic tools. We've got the this is the top stacks tool that I've looked at mostly for quarterbacks, and then for every other position, I'm primarily looking at the boom bust tool, which is very straightforward. Just gives you the ownership projection for each player, their odds of hitting a boom score, and then their odds of being in the optimal lineup. And you can the legend is up here explaining what everything is, and then of course leverage, which is just the optimal odds minus ownership. Very simple, straightforward stat there. So you can always check out our tools as well. And of course, if you're watching this right now live, you're on the Stochastic channel, you're going to be able to find the links to all of these tools in the description of the video here on YouTube. All right, and by the way, guys, we have, how many people do we have watching right now? We've got 280 people watching right now. We've only got 39 likes so far. Somebody just hit it. So now we're up to 40 likes. Do appreciate you guys. If you could hit that like button, really does help us out quite a bit. Helps out with the YouTube algorithm, getting people watching our shows, and we're doing the show for free. So if you could hit us with the like button, we do really appreciate it. All right, so getting back to it, do we have any other? Here's a question that I wanted to ask you, Scott. So we talked about Amari Cooper, great matchup there for the Browns, but is he the only Browns receiver that you're interested in? Like, do you have any interest in playing a Donovan Peoples-Jones or an Eli Moore?
Yeah, I like Elijah Moore. This is like one of my guys who's just like tied to me and my brand forever.
Okay.
And it's just like what's happening this year is the same thing that's always happening. Is just like he looks really good. He looks awesome. He's coming dangerously close to some really big plays. The volume's good, 8 targets, 1.5 carries per game, maybe even some more backfield snaps now without Chubb. And it's just, the quarterback can't come close to getting him the ball, 4 yards sailing over his head. But yeah, it's the best possible matchup. It's a player I love. So I did write him up. I did talk about him. I think he was my number 3 contrarian play. But I have 2 plays who I think could break the slate.
Ooh, well, that's exciting. That's a good tease there, Scott, because now I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to hear who are the plays at wide receiver who could break the slate here.
I feel like maybe next week I'm going to have to give away less, because I feel like I'm going to get in trouble with my subscribers for giving away too much from the paywall right here. So maybe next week we'll have to cap this. But so week 1, I said the best wide receiver GPP was Brandon Ayuk. Week 2 said Jahan Dotson, didn't work out. This week I think it's Rashid Shaheed.
Oh, I know Debro is in chat. He's excited about the Rashid Shaheed. He's looked good this year. I can't deny the Rashid Shaheed love. What do we got the price tag on for Shaheed? So he's
4,200.
Okay.
It's not just that like you said, he looks good this year, but he's always been good. Since the start of last season, he ranks 3rd best in yards per route run. Everyone in the top 15 of that list was being drafted in rounds 1 and 2 of your season long league. He's a volatile play this week and every week, because he's not quite a full-time player. He's 66% route share, which isn't ideal. And then like the bulk of his targets come he's top 5 in the league this year and last year in percentage of targets coming on deep passes. And so what that means is like, those are valuable targets, but they lend itself more towards high volatility, because like, you don't catch those, that you score 0 points. And like, those are low probability to catch targets. But if you do, then you could like break the slate.
Right.
And so it's a few different things with Shaheed. Again, he's awesome. But I thought this stat was incredible. Since the start of last season, and among 120 receivers, he ranks 86th in fantasy points per route run against man, second best against zone. Green Bay plays zone at the highest rate in the league. There's only been like 6 snaps where they didn't play zone. And so again, Shaheed's bread and butter is the deep ball. Packers, really good defense everywhere except against the deep ball. Since the start of last season, they ranked dead last in fantasy points per target allowed to opposing wide receivers on deep passes. I also think there's a good chance Chris Olave is shadowed by Jari Alexander, which should theoretically funnel even more work towards Shaheed. So like, this is a volatile play, but it's just like, what's his ownership? His potential
4%.
4%. His potential to break the slate is way better than 4%.
Love it. And 4,200, the price is right there. All right. So Rashid Shaheed, one of your my guys this week. Here's a guy that and maybe this is something that I should start looking on fantasy points for, because I couldn't find it in the place that I usually look to find a wide receiver's routes run has not been working for rookies so far this year. So I haven't been able to find it. JSN, his routes run so far. Do you happen to know what that's looked like so far for JSN? Because he hasn't been targeted a ton. He's 4,300 though against Carolina. That's just like it jumps out to me as like Jackson Smith-Njigba is 4,300 against Carolina. We've got him at sub 2% ownership. He feels like a guy who, like, in a matchup that Seattle should have a pretty easy time, like they should be able to do what they want. Maybe they want to get their rookie wide receiver going, but if he's not out there, then he's not out there. That's not worth doing. What do you think about JSN? Is he at least interesting here?
Yeah, do me a favor, go back to the data tool and go to advanced receiving, and we can look this up together.
Okay. So we're going to advanced receiving.
Someone on Twitter said too, I think Will Dissly is going to miss, and someone on Twitter said they wouldn't be surprised if Seattle went more 11 personnel, which has really been what's killing JSN. And he's looked good, like, if you really account for that. So like, I get it. I didn't write him up. I think he was too closely priced to Josh Reynolds or someone I like more. But yeah, so right there in the search bar, just type in Seahawks. And you could sort by route percentage right there. And so
61%.
Yeah, so 61%, that's not ideal. That's typically in a range where I don't, target a player, but look at targets right there.
Yeah, targets. I mean, I also want to just separate, see if he has taken the same jump that Addison took. So wait, targets, he has 11 targets through 2 games is fine. Like, it's not like jumping off the page, but like at 4,300, that's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't done anything with his targets, to be fair, but it is like the same argument with Addison where it's like, well, what if that jumps?
Right, exactly. Wait,
I like a different rookie wide receiver though.
I mean, we already talked about Jordan Addison, so we're just loving all of these rookie wide receivers. Wait, but let me just see this first. Okay, so it didn't jump in week 2 for JSN, so that's not happening. Maybe he gets more run with Will Dissly. I don't know. I think that I'm going to take some shots there on JSN. I don't think that it's necessarily like a slam dunk play though, like he would have been if we saw like an 85% route participation. All right, who is your rookie wide receiver?
That's Jonathan Mingo.
Ooh, all right.
So everyone just says like Mingo just stinks. He's like trash, which like could be true. It could be true, but he leads the team in targets by 2. Among all wide receivers, he ranks 22nd in first read target share. That's typically a team stat. 18th in air yards, 8th in air yardage market share. He's seen 45% of the team's air yards. Maybe he stinks, but maybe he's just been on the lesser end of variance. Remember we were just talking about that with Rashid Shaheed. Yep. And so he's a 14.1 ADOT. And so it's just a matter of like, you're not coming down with those targets. But if you did, so week to week, it's just massive volatility. And like, that's what we want to be leaning into in GPPs. I think Andy Dalton is really good news for this offense. Like I said, like last year, he was top 3 in catchable target rate, 4th best in PFF pass grade, 2nd best in depth adjusted completion percentage, really accurate on deep throws. You saw that with Shaheed. You saw that with Olave. DJ Chark's still banged up. Tariq Woolen is out for the Seahawks, and they've been like easily one of the worst defenses against wide receivers. They've surrendered four games through 2 weeks of a wide receiver scoring 19 or more DraftKings fantasy points. And then I talked about it earlier, looking at quarterbacks and receivers by, open targets and then their completion percentage on that. And like Mingo was dead last. He had way more open targets than a lot of other receivers. He's just not getting thrown catchable balls, and he did drop one. So that's another thing that screams regression. I know this feels galaxy brain, but what was it? 3,400 and 3%. No one's going to play him. This is like a high volatility role we want to lean into.
Yep. All right. I like that call for Jonathan Mingo. I'm going to be so angry if it's Adam Thielen all year.
Oh
He's
my
the
God,
only
yeah.
player that I was like, you cannot, I'm not drafting Adam Thielen. He was so bad last year. He's still so bad this year. If you watch the game, like he's never open yet. For some reason, Bryce Young is just feeding him the ball, and he got there in the last game. If this Adam Thielen thing continues, I'm quitting fantasy football. Brutal, right? I mean,
yeah.
Right.
Oh, another guy too. Just we were talking about Stroud is he's probably Thielen tier of cooked, but Robert Woods, he's priced as the wide receiver 40, and he ranks 9th among all wide receivers and targets, maybe like 7th on the slate in targets, and just like no one's going to play him, and he's cheap.
Yeah, that's an interesting call out. Yeah, Robert Woods going to be lower owned, at least.
I mean, I like the other 2 Texans receivers more than him, but everyone else has to feel that way, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that is the case. You briefly mentioned Josh Reynolds as somebody that you're interested in. I don't think that you really went into it, did you?
No, I guess not. Let's see what I wrote up on him.
He's 4,200. We've got him at 9% ownership, so looks like the ownership is there for Josh Reynolds, not as like off the beaten path as some of these other options, but it seems to make some sense. He's been out there for Detroit.
Yeah. So again, he's a little banged up, but like not as much as St. Brown, who also like theoretically has a tough matchup for him. After St. Brown picked up that turf toe injury, he earned a 24% target share. That's really good. St. Brown only saw 1 target from that point on. And then I have a good stat from Jake Tribby. He has only played 11 games with a route share over 60%. He was 73% last week, only 11 games over 60, but he's had spike weeks of 24, 21, 16, 16, 15 fantasy points in 5 of those games. So just like a decent, cheap GPP play.
Okay. That's interesting. Another name that I was going to throw out there is Josh Palmer, who's been playing ahead of Quentin Johnson, but I just looked up his route participation. Josh Palmer only at 64%, which enough that maybe you could consider that. Do you think Josh Palmer is in play as a contrarian option, maybe a pivot off of some of the chalkier Chargers guys?
Yeah, I probably. I don't know. I'm just kind of set on my guys, Tank Dell and
sure.
Who did I just talk about? Mingo. Yeah.
Dell
and Devontae Parker too, but monitor the weather, etc.
Are we just going to make an all rookie DraftKings team? Is that what we're going to do this week? Because I feel like we've liked rookies at literally every position.
I mean, historically, it's a trap to play rookies this early, and you should wait until the second half historically. But
any other wide receivers you want to throw out there before we move on to tight ends?
Probably not.
As I mentioned, I'm going to be playing some DJ Moore in my Justin Fields stack just because I think it's going to be a super contrarian stack. That's one more name that I would throw out there. Just seeing if there are any others that I'm like really in on that I want to get your take on. Sounded like you're only playing Pittman from Indy.
Yeah. You can make a case for their rookie wide receiver. I just don't think he has any upside. He has like a 2.28 out roll.
Yeah, you could play Downs. Oh, actually, I'm curious about Chris Olave for you. Is he somebody that you have any interest in?
No, remember that was part of the thesis on Shaheed. Is there's
right. Yep.
A really good chance Jari shadows. This is like actually less likely than it was for Surtain on McLaurin. So like, who knows? Maybe it's the Olave week, but yeah, Shaheed was one of my flag plans, so that's how I'm going. But yeah, that didn't work out well last week, so maybe it's Olave in that deep threat role. Okay. But again, Shaheed is the guy who murders zone historically.
All right, so go Rashid Shaheed. All right, let's talk some tight ends. So at the top end of the ownership, we got Travis Kelce, and then it's a long break. So we got 16% projected ownership for Travis Kelce. Big breakdown to TJ Hawkinson at 9%. Durham Smythe is number 3 for us at 8%. I mean, Kelsey really the only. Let's group those top three in together. I want to get your takes on those three: Kelsey, Hawkinson, Smythe. How you feeling about them?
Yeah, that's great. I put Mark Andrews in there too, and you
Okay.
know that's just about perfect. I have Zach Ertz as like the best cash play, and I also really like him for tournaments. Like, yeah, maybe he's not going to break the slate, but like typically a player getting this sort of volume like has way more upside than what people are giving him credit for, even if he is mega dusty. Like I just don't care. So I would make that the top five.
Sorry. It was these top four, and then who was your fifth?
Uh,
Zach Ertz. Zach
Zach
Ertz.
Ertz. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
I don't know why I keep spacing.
No, yeah, you said it, and then I was reading comments, and then yeah. So that's your top five: Kelsey, Hawkinson, Smythe, Andrews, and then Zach Ertz. So I think people are going to question, like, should they be playing Gerald Everett? And just looking at the route participant, just 38% of routes for Gerald Everett, 37% for Donald
Yeah, and if
Parham.
you scroll to the right real quick, I just want to check end zone targets. I feel like they definitely pervert. Yeah, so
Parham.
you scroll too far. But anyway, Gerald Everett had 2 end zone targets to Parham 0. You just keep
All right, where is he?
scrolling.
End zone
We'll get the hang of this.
targets. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think Parham is a better play than Everett, basically. We could also like go further and like look at route share inside the 10-yard line or inside the 20. We don't have to do that right now, but
Yeah.
I'd get that Parham jumps ahead of him in those situations.
Okay. So that's something that, again, if you have access to that data, you can check out that kind of stuff. But man, that route participation. And to me, it's like, that kind of means that neither of them is really in play. Like Parham, I guess if he gets 2 touchdowns, he gets there. But like, what are the odds of Parham putting up, 5 for 60 in a touchdown? That just feels like pretty light. Like he's out there in the red zone, could score a touchdown, but like, what's he going to get? 8 fantasy points? Is that gonna be enough? Probably not. So I don't know. I don't know that I love either of those guys, but thought I should at least bring them up because that is the chalky game. People are going to want to know about, like, are those good, pivots, leverage plays off of the chalkier guys in that game? And I don't really think they are, but at least in play. Any other tight ends that you want to throw out there as like hardcore contrarian options that you like here?
Yeah, definitely. I like Kyle Pitts, which just goes back to the my Desmond Ridder thesis. Like he's 3,900. He's $763 cheaper than he was at any point last season. He leads the position in air yardage market share by a mile, which is like such a bad stat I keep seeing on Twitter. Like that doesn't matter when like Desmond Ridder has thrown only 6 passes to non-running backs and like
Right.
Kyle Pitts himself doesn't lead the position in air yards, but it like does hint at his, potential should Arthur Smith, lean more into the pass. He's also gotten like insanely unlucky. He's had 11.5 fantasy points, minimum of 11.5 called back due to penalty or DPI. And if you add those back, like by far the most, and if you add that back in, he'd actually rank as fantasy's tight end 4. We know he's super talented. Yeah, we know he's super talented. So he has the potential to break a slate. 3,900 again. And I do think Atlanta scores more this week. Also like Sam Laporta, it's like the same thesis with Josh Reynolds and Jahmyr Gibbs with this hypothetical Amon-Ra St. Brown injury. It's also a matchup that better suits him. Really good usage last week, usage that jumped from week 1. And then I'm not seeing him. Where's Hunter Henry for you?
We have a very little ownership, just 1.4% projected ownership. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy for me for the guy who, ranks top 3 at the position in fantasy point or second at the position in fantasy points. 2 really productive weeks, really good route participation last week. And so like one of our guys, Chris Wecht, I know you know Chris, but he made a really compelling argument digging into Hunter Henry's usage. I think if you scroll all the way to the right and look at slot rate, is he's basically been not just like New England's tight end 1, but he's basically been their slot wide receiver. Yeah, look at that. 68% route share in the slot. Mike Gesicki's not in the field anywhere near as much. So if you just look at total routes, which you can do using our filters, he's led the team in routes and also led all tight ends and slot routes. And like that's been one of the biggest cheat codes in fantasy for years is Bill Belichick runs the passing game through his slot wide receiver. And now this is, Bill O'Brien massively picking up the pace of play, going more pass heavy. Hunter Henry and Mac Jones were roommates for a number of years. So they have their roommate connection that's led to, that's typically his guy in the red zone. And so, I think that makes a ton of sense. People are just like, there's no way this can continue. But at the odds of it continuing are a lot better than 1%.
All of best ball season, I thought that Hunter Henry was a fantastic play. I was drafting him ahead of Mike Gesicki. I went and looked at how much I had of Hunter Henry, and I'm like 5%, like so much less than in my mind. I'm like, I've got 20% of that guy. This is awesome that he's breaking out. But if he was one of those names that was just like so unsexy that it's like, how do you like, if there's a sexier option, I clicked it. Apparently way too much because Hunter Henry appears to be that guy in New England. So that is a great call out of Hunter Henry there. And I saw people in chat asking about Sam Laporta. You already kind of answered that question. What about Dalton Kincaid? Are we doing anything with the Buffalo tight ends at all this weekend?
No, I don't think so. He didn't even lead in routes last week. That was Dawson Knox. Chig, I'm a big Chig guy. I love Chig. I don't know. He's typically their zone beater. He gets a man heavy defense this week. To me, really, like I think we should have spent more time on the chalky guys at the top. Smythe makes all the sense in the world. Bell cow tight end, leads the position in snap share, route share. It's a top 5 off passing offense in the NFL. He's up against what was last year the number 1 tight end funnel defense. They gave up the most targets to tight ends. It's a function of Surtain being so good. Jalen Waddle's out. Incredible play, but I think it makes a lot of sense to really consider paying up for the premium tight ends, perhaps especially Kelsey. He's about 700 cheaper than he was last year. Maybe it was like 500. And Andrews is 700 cheaper than he was last year. And it's just like the tight end position has been so unbelievably bad. There are only 2 tight ends on the slate priced under 6K who have reached 12 fantasy points once. And so like, what's Kelsey's upside? Last week, he was on a capped route share, 56%. He had 20.9 XFP. That was like wide receiver 1 usage, by far the best of any tight end in any week this season. Even if he's like not close to 100%, like, I don't know, he could easily have 10 catches this week and like Mahomes just forces it to him.
Right.
And so when you factor that in, like there's massive upside. I had a tweet last year. I just wanted to pull up so I get the numbers right, but basically, oh no, I didn't pull it. But anyway, through like the first 3 weeks of last season, it was something like, if you look at the top 50 top 50 lineups in the Millie Maker, in each of the first 3 weeks, Kelsey or Andrews was on 80% of them. And that's the sort of upside these players have because they could put up wide receiver 1 production at a position that's basically putting up like defense, like bad defense numbers. So.
Okay. So you really like, it's, I mean, we did kind of skip over those chalky guys, but you mentioned that those are your 5 favorites on the board: Kelsey, Hawkinson, Durham Smythe, Mark Andrews, and then Zach Ertz, kind of the top 5 there, or 5 of your favorite options right off the top. So those are good call outs. I saw somebody in chat was bringing up, and I was going to bring him up also because we talked about the Cleveland passing game. Jeff Pataglia says Njoku is going to be my favorite since Tennessee is the worst against tight end. Tennessee, we talked about, they're very much a pass funnel. Do you think it benefits Njoku this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it could. I don't see them as being bad against tight ends. Like I said, they've ranked bottom 2 in fantasy points per game allowed to opposing wide receivers for 4 straight years. Against tight ends, where did he rank this year? They're like 20th. Or maybe last year I think it was kind of the same thing. Really, like they've been like an outside slot wide receiver funnel defense. But I do think it's interesting when I listen to their coach kind of talk about the offense. They make it seem like the whole offense is designed about getting Cooper and Njoku in mismatches. And so he said Njoku's name above Elijah. But no,
That is interesting.
I like the two receivers there more.
Okay, I know we want to finish up the show, and Scott and I still have to make a lineup here. I do want to ask you what, just because this is a name that I was meaning to bring up. Taysom Hill. Any interest in Taysom Hill as the? I mean, they're missing a lot of their running backs. Is there a chance that Taysom Hill is just like gets 12 carries and 2 touchdowns here?
Possible. I was a big Kendra Miller guy. I thought he was one of the most underrated running backs.
True.
To come out in the draft. So I'm kind of just the way I'm playing my own lineups is that he's going to get the majority of the work, and Taysom's going to go back to his week 1 role. But I mean, like, you never know. He looked great at whatever they were doing with him last week.
Right.
I get that argument. I'm not doing it.
I think I might do it. I would group those two out, though. I would not play Kendre and Taysom in the same lineup, but I think that he is sort of interesting just because the running game is so banged up. Kendre Miller, coming back from injury. I think that there are outs to Taysom getting there in this matchup. So I think that it's viable. I don't know that I'm going to have a ton of it, but I'll probably have a few shares there. I mentioned Cole Kmet as a tight end that I'm going to have some interest in. Do you have any others, or are you ready to build a lineup here?
Let's do it.
All right, let's build a lineup. This is for the Millie Maker. So we're going to do, once again, we did this last week. We built for the Millie Maker. We cashed last week. Let's see if we can do better than cashing this week. Let's take the whole damn thing down, Scott. Who wants to, do you want me to start again with the stack, or do you
pick first.
You know that if I pick first, I'm going to go to I'm going to force the Fields thing, right?
Well, I get a veto.
Oh, you get how many vetoes do you get?
Only one.
All right,
one per position. And you get one too.
One per position. All right. I'm going to go Justin Fields. Okay, are you going to use your veto?
No, that's fine. Do we? Oh God, are you going to force me into a double tight end again? No, we can't do that.
No.
All right, Kelsey.
All right, we're going Kelsey. I don't hate that. I don't hate that one bit.
I feel like for maybe future shows, we should, maybe I'll dive into players a little bit less, and maybe we'll do like a three entry max tournament or something, just so there's more.
Yeah, we could do that.
More game theory, and less me bloviating over.
No, I feel, but we get so deep into the players. I think that it makes sense. So for me, Fields, if we're going Fields, we're single stacking. I think I'm just gonna go to DJ Moore most likely. Maybe I just fill out the stack right away. All right, I'm going to go doing the Fields DJ Moore thing. I know we had Debro in here earlier saying that it should be Kmet. I think that could make sense too, but for this one, we're going to go Fields DJ Moore. We're going to avoid the double tight end most likely.
Yeah, I do think. Yeah. DJ Moore, by the way, goes up against the Chiefs, who last season gave up the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receiver ones. He had a really bad matchup in week 1, so that could be an argument for him. Let's go. So here's something I like doing. All right, maybe this is an idea. Sorry for going off the rails.
No.
What if we make 2 lineups?
Okay.
But we only pick one. So you give me a lineup where I start, and then we just agree on whichever one's our favorite is the one we hit enter on.
Okay. That works for me. We can do that.
Because I wanted to pick your brain on something.
Okay. Well then, let's finish out this lineup first.
We'll save it for later.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it immediately. We'll finish this lineup first, and then we'll do the one that you want to start.
Okay. Let's do.
And you can pick any position, obviously.
Right. Let's do Tyreek and Addison.
I don't mind that. 5,500 Addison makes sense. All right, so I feel like at this point we don't have any Chargers in the lineup. I feel like Josh Kelly makes some sense as a leverage play against all of the Chargers. So I want to go with Josh Kelly in there. We're getting low on salary. Maybe we should throw a defense in there just to have an idea how much salary.
I don't want to do that because I'll probably want to stack the running back. I mean, assuming we could afford it. You want to just throw Tank Dell in there and just so we kind of.
Okay. Yeah,
or Mingo, because Mingo was, someone no one's talking about. And then maybe there's,
wait, what is Mingo's?
I think he's 33.
So he's even cheaper. That makes sense. All right, we're going Mingo. Oh, I guess I can just search.
Oh, 34.
Okay. So now
all
we
right.
need.
So then I don't know if this makes sense or not. Oh, I guess we can't do that. I was gonna say Walker plus Seahawks, but we don't have anywhere near the salary.
Yeah.
All right. You want to do Kendre?
Yeah. Let's see what we can do with Kendre. We have 2,400 left over. Commanders.
Yeah, Josh Allen had 5 turnovers in week 1. You could blame that on the weather, but it's another bad weather game.
We took the defense against Josh Allen last week, and it was brutal for us. We got -2 points there, but I think this one feels a little bit better.
Did cash though.
We did cash. That's true. We did cash.
Defenses against Buffalo are turning a profit for us, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would change out here? Is there maybe like a mini stack we're neglecting?
No, I think we've got the single stack there with the run back, and I think that I like the pieces that we have with Fields, Moore, and Travis Kelce. We don't have much correlation outside of. Do we have any correlation outside of that stack? I don't think we do. Honestly, I don't know. I don't usually force in secondary stacks. I know some people, if you're hand building, obviously if you're hand building, you have more opportunity to do so. But I don't think we really need to necessarily. Oh, I guess we do have the secondary stack of Kelly and Addison. So this is a pretty nicely correlated lineup. I don't think it's going to be crazy high owned. I think Fields, just doing the Fields to DJ Moore thing right away, we're really low owned in our primary stack.
Oh, what about McKinnon? Stack to Fields.
McKinnon with Fields. So we would take
what's
out.
What's his price?
He's, I think, 4,500. I believe.
Oh, okay. Well, then you could play Bears, where maybe they just.
Yeah.
I guess that doesn't make sense.
I think I like it. I think this is I have no issues with this lineup. I don't see anybody that I feel like this is a horrible play. Like we clearly need to swap somebody out to do better.
I think DJ Moore is what I like the least about it.
Quit shitting on my plays, Scott.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay.
You want me to just run out naked? We're not running out naked Fields, Scott. You want to swap him out for Darnell Mooney?
I think Fields is gonna have like hit 5x value, have like 217 rushing yards, and then like 5 picks and 13 passing yards. No. It makes sense. It makes sense.
All right. Let's start over. So I like the lineup just as it is. I don't think that I see any necessary moves here. We could get rid of Moore, go to a different pass catcher for the Bears. Again, I'm not running out Fields naked, but we could certainly do it with Darnell Mooney. We could do the double tight end thing again with Cole Kmet. There are ways to make it work. But I mean, you gave us a stat that the Chiefs gave up a ton of fantasy points to the wide receiver ones last year, and DJ Moore pretty clearly the wide receiver one. So
they also gave up the 3rd most schedule adjusted rushing fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Basically just means like a lot of rushing, but like that is, if I remember correctly, it's like the running quarterbacks like Josh Allen underwhelmed, and then like random guys like Russell Wilson and Jared Goff had like way more rushing yards than you'd expect.
That's funny.
I do remember that stat.
Just Really Good says that we should swap out all the Bears. Here, listen, guys. I'm getting a lot of pushback. A lot of people are like, why the fuck are you playing Justin Fields? This is for a milli maker. And by the way, people didn't love the Daniel Jones pick last week. Guess what Daniel Jones did? He smashed. So Justin Fields, yeah, it's a low probability play, but he's coming in at under 1% ownership. I think that it's a high volatility. I think that there's a chance that Justin Fields puts up 4 fantasy points and just gets absolutely smashed, continues to look completely lost out there. But I love the fact that he wants to play more instinctively. I love the fact that the Chiefs defense doesn't really scare me. I just think that there's a wide range of outcomes here for Justin Fields. And one of them, I think pretty clearly, is breaking the slate wide open. So, it's a funny comment. Don't get me wrong. And swap out all the Bears. I get it. But for this lineup, I don't hate it. But Scott, you say you want to do a completely different lineup. So should we do that now?
Yeah. You want to just enter that so we have that for context?
Yeah, I do want to. It's not letting me.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on here.
Maybe DraftKings is trying to save you from yourself.
Maybe they're like, you got too many bears in this lineup. Come on, Neil.
You know how like people get limited for like, you know, gambling addiction concerns. It's like,
Right.
it's like, oh, he's trying to play Fields. You know, something must be wrong.
I do not know. I've never had this issue where it's just like not taking my click.
This is the
Maybe I'll enter it on my phone.
watch. It's like the this is the lineup that wins $1 million.
And it doesn't let me enter it. Yeah. All right. I'm going to enter this one on my phone because for whatever reason, it's not letting me do it here. The contest isn't Fields. So we got Fields. We got Kelly and Kendre. I guess I can use my search function here. This is I know this is great TV watching me fill out a lineup.
Yeah, let me keep people interested. So you've been watching for an hour and 45 minutes. This entire time I wanted to pick Neil's brain on one thing in particular. So like I'm so excited to get to the next section. This is something I've always done and it just never works out for me, but I like the idea of it. I like the idea a lot. So I really want to hear Neil's opinion here.
All right. I want to, are you waiting for me to finish doing this? Wait, why is this? All right.
Are we still glitching?
I don't know what's going on. No, okay. I just misclicked. So I was, all right. We are almost there. I'm almost with you. Getting to the flex Mingo. Hopefully it lets me enter this lineup on, and then Commanders defense, submit. Okay, I was able to submit it on my phone.
Nice.
All right.
So you can clear this now.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
So this isn't my preferred. Oh no, we could do this. All right. Click on wide receiver. Give me Jefferson and Tyreek. And then you could pick between Kelsey or Pollard. Who do you want?
Let's go Kelsey.
Okay. Actually, all right.
We did Kelsey in the last one, though.
All right. Let's go Pollard.
Let's go Pollard just to be different.
Okay. Now give me Ritter and Pitts. And let me explain my thoughts. And well, I guess once Pitts gets in there.
Okay.
All right. I love doing this. I do this constantly and it never works out for me, but it always comes so close. So I think Jefferson's like an amazing play. I think he can get 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think Tyreek Hill can get 18 catches and 57 fantasy points. I think they're great play. I think Pollard is definitely the best running back play, you know, point per dollar projection, most likely outcome. And so none of them are unique because they're so expensive, but like they're theoretically unique on the same lineup, right? The issue is like, I always do this, like weeks where this makes sense. And then Jefferson flops and then Addison goes nuclear. And it's like the guy I was saying was the leverage play goes out and so my lineup doesn't win $1 million, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that makes sense to have chalky players, but a unique combination like this? Does that offset anything?
Sure. If it does end up, the combinatorial ownership ends up being really light, which I do think, yes, there is some merit to it. Like this is a really tough lineup. So I do the same thing when I'm hand building quite frequently. If there are like a few chalk players who I think have the possibility of absolutely smashing the slate and there's value that I like, I will do the same kind of lineup sometimes. I also have not won $1 million with that type of lineup, but I think that it is a good theoretical way to play. Like I think that it makes a lot of sense. I don't like, it'll be interesting to see. I'm trying to think if I have a way to look after the fact of what the combinatorial ownership is for these three in particular together: Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, Tony Pollard. My instinct is that you're probably right, that not a lot of people are going to be doing it, because anybody who plays Justin Jefferson is going to want to play Keenan Allen, Mike Williams right away.
Look how easy it is though. Like, all right, put in Kendre, put in Reynolds. Reynolds fits the stack. Oh, by the way, we never talked about River Craycraft.
Did we want to?
Yeah, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
All
He's
right.
an awesome
I
player.
missed that. Okay. What do
Because
you want to
Waddle's
say about
out.
River?
Waddle's out. That's another
Oh, true.
reason
Good
why,
point. Good
like,
point.
I'm probably gonna have a ton of Tua this week. You play I don't know, what's the cheapest decent defense? You
We could do the Commanders again.
yeah, just put them in for now.
All right.
Yeah, and then so you have
49.
Tank Dell, you have Mingo, you have Mims.
Marvin Mims, his 2 routes run for
That's my
150
boy.
yards.
Devontae Parker, who I like a lot.
Even against the Jets.
Yeah, Parker's so weird. He's one of these guys who, like, the tougher his cornerback matchup is, like, the better he performs. But yeah, it's just I mean,
I feel
the Patriots lead the league in pass attempts right now, and he's just like easily their best receiver in my opinion.
Would you rather? I mean, I feel like this lineup is so contrarian that we could just go to a Tank Dell or whoever you think just projects the best. I think would make sense in this lineup because we're so off the beaten path already that we don't really need to go for a low owned player.
I mean, we could just get rid of this. I really just kind of wanted to pick your brain on.
No, I think that it totally makes sense. Like if you believe that this Ritter Pitts stack has the potential to go off, and you really like the high, like I have no reason to not like this type of lineup. It's not like it's super chalky overall when you're adding in the Ritter components. Yeah, I do think that it makes some sense to play low owned combos. Like I do think that makes some sense, but like the way to doing that is obviously it's not playing the chalky guys. So like I think that this combo, yes, you can absolutely play it. I think that playing Jefferson, Hill, Pollard, like 3 chalky guys, like you're not doing it because they're chalk, obviously. Like you're doing it because they all have enormous ceilings, and that's why they're chalk. So yeah, I think that it will probably come in at a low combined ownership. So if say you do get 120 combined points out of Pollard, Jefferson, and Hill, which I don't think is out of the realm of possibility, I do think it is going to be a low owned combo. So yeah, I think that it's a sharp way to play. I think building out this type of way where you're taking 3 chalky pieces, but not playing a super chalky combined lineup where the players themselves have high combinatorial ownership. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, and again, I do think there is a lot of value this week. We keep talking about Kendre. There's Parker, there's Tank Dell, there's Mingo, there's Craycraft. Yeah, so you could do whatever you want here with the flex and defense. That could be your call.
Okay, yeah. So for me, the flex I would probably just go to. I'd probably just go to Tank Dell here. Let me see. River Craycraft, kind of interesting. Let's see if I put in Tank Dell, then what can I do at defense? I don't hate the idea of the Falcons against Detroit, even though Detroit is projected for a lot of fantasy points. I think this is something that I've continued to do, and I don't know that it actually makes any sense. So it used to be that I loved picking on Jared Goff with defenses because it seemed like he had McVay in his ear, and that was like when he was good. And for a little while, it seemed to work out. Maybe it just happened a couple times early on where I tried to pick on Jared Goff and he like threw interceptions. Doesn't see like his interceptions have been down though, so probably not as sharp as it once was to try to take defenses against Jared Goff in general and hope for the interceptions. But I think the Atlanta defense is not terrible. I don't hate the idea of going to the Falcons defense. How do you think about that?
I don't know. What do you think is the best defense value? Is it the Bills? No.
What are the Bills at? Oh, they're 2,900 against Washington. Yeah, that seems fine to me. Actually, the Jets against New England makes some sense to me.
Yeah.
They're probably it would probably be the Jets, right? 2,800 for the Jets. So I guess if we did that, we could do Jets and then pivot off of maybe to your guy Craycraft in the flex.
Well, I like Mingo a lot.
Wait, can we fit Mingo? What is he? He's 34. Ah, yeah, we could do that. I like that. I think that looks like a solid lineup.
Do you like the Jets over the Bills though? Because once we lock this in, we can't change it.
That is true. There is no changing once you've locked in. My instinct is yes, but it sounds like you disagree. You like the Bills better? We can do that. I'm good with that. Sam Howell, not a believer in Sam Howell.
Let me check our projections to make sure I'm on base here. No, we have Jets over Bills. All right.
This is a rare good point by Brandon Katz. I do think that that the Patriots defense looks good. We can't fit him in this lineup, but yeah, again, any defense against Zach Wilson certainly gets a little bump there. So you have the Jets over the Bills. Well, I'm going to trust my instincts then and trust your projections and go with Jets over Bills. And this is what's going to cost us $1 million. That pivot right there. If only you hadn't looked it up, Scott. If only you hadn't looked it up, we were going to win $1 million. And now we just shot ourselves in the foot. All right. Do you have any final thoughts, Scott?
Are we playing 2 lineups this week then? Is that what it is?
Yeah, we're playing 2 lineups this week.
Oh, awesome. All right. Yeah, no final thoughts.
All right. No final thoughts from Scott. You can find him on Twitter at Scott Barrett DFB. You're sure? Nothing. You got nothing to say. You're done. It's been nearly 2 hours.
I think so. It's been 2 hours. Yeah.
We meant to go an hour and a half. All right. We have no final thoughts for you guys. We've given you 2 hours of just talking. Thank you guys so much for watching that. We really appreciate you hanging out with us. If you haven't done so, please hit that like button. And also, of course, we told you before, but all of the links for all of our tools, both sites are in the description of this video. I don't know if we have specific links for like the data suite, but you can find it pretty easily on the Fantasy Points website. It's just at the top of the page. You can find the data suite if you want to check that out. Very cool tool. And then all the stochastic links, you can find the boom buster. This is all going to be included in all of our NFL packages. So check out all of our tools in the description of the video. Hit the like button. That's going to do it for the show. Thank you guys so much for watching. Good luck this weekend.